Hi, I'm Dr. Joseph Witt-Doerring. It's my pleasure to be joined again by Adele here. She is going to be talking today about Outro, which is a deprescribing service, which she is, heavily involved in. I believe you founded it or co-founded it. Maybe you
Well,
could kind of start off and tell me about that. Yeah,
I can't claim to be a founder, but I was among the
yeah.
first few people that was involved in it.
hmm
Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, why don't you start off and just tell us, I guess, what is Outro and how did it start?
Well, I think that those of us who have been observing the problems with antidepressant withdrawal for a long time have often wondered how can we get this into the hands, how can we assign this responsibility to medical doctors? Because it actually should be done by medical doctors rather than, let's say, peer support groups such as mine, or the many peer support groups on Facebook. so, so in the UK, there have been developments that where it would seem that with the Royal College of Psychiatrists guidelines and the new nice guidance for NHS doctors, that the doctors would take over. But in the rest of the world, it really hasn't gotten into general practice at all. So we're not seeing health systems really take it up in any systematic way. Um, and it just seemed inevitable that at some point somebody would see the opportunity. And Outro is a startup company that is it's a for-profit business, and the idea is to offer medical tapering to patients. It's a company that offers actual medical services. So it has a licensed staff, and we they're really wonderful people. And Mark Horowitz is one of the founders, and he has, and I have helped train the staff in gradual hyperbolic tapering. So Outro specifically is based on the concepts of hyperbolic tapering. And we also recognize that people need, they need encouragement and psychological support. They need the personal touch. So we offer a system of support from the clinicians, and from we offer a lot of publications that to inform people about what they can expect with withdrawal, and what they can do if they should have any problems. Outro was started in last fall in Canada, and it's currently offering services only in the provinces of Ontario and British Columbia, which are the
hmm
two most populated provinces in Canada. And it's taking a waiting list for other areas, including the United States. The hope is that it will expand into the United States. But to be honest, the investment climate is very poor right now. If anybody would like to be an angel for a startup, please contact me, and I'll connect you with the people from Outro. But we're working. It's moving along, and Outro has taken patients. The membership is paid out of pocket, where Outro hopes to be covered by insurance, but going through those processes to get insurance coverage takes a lot of time and paperwork. So that's an eventual process, but for now we're offering medical services that are paid out of pocket by the patient, and the clinicians will communicate with the patient's own doctor, so their own doctor knows what's going on, and their care is coordinated among the providers. So it's real medical care. It's not, it's a serious service
And
that.
so when someone is using Outro, are they working with, like a coach who's going to coach their healthcare provider, or is it someone who's actually prescribing for them their hyperbolic taper, um, and then just kind of letting their family doctor know, hey, this is what we're doing?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
yes, Outros has licensed prescribers.
Okay.
So the prescribers will set up the tapering plan in consultation with the patient, the way it should be done. Asking the patient, what is it that you want to do? What's your history? And we're also concerned about their psychological well-being. So we're offering all of that type of care and concern that you would want in when somebody is about to, perhaps go off some number of years of psychiatric drug treatment. So they are asked to be in very close touch with the clinician, and through the services offered over telemedicine. So they're asked to be in touch through the usual electronic channels, so that the clinician can be apprised if there are any changes in their state as the tapering proceeds. And meanwhile, after the person enrolls, the clinician will contact the person's treating physician and let them know that that this is going on. For some people, there may be communication with the treating physician, so the treating physician does the prescribing, but the offering is that the Outro personnel will do the prescribing. And we have a list of pharmacies that will do compounding, that understand what it is that we want them to do. It's up to if the patient can choose among the pharmacies, or if the patient has another pharmacy, we'll communicate with them as well, which is important because we were talking earlier about how the very practical difficulty of dividing doses to accomplish a gradual taper. So Outros addressed that problem, and with Mark Horowitz's help, we've looked at it drug by drug so that we can be sure to offer tapering of all the antidepressants.
Tell me about Cymbalta. How do you guys do that one? Because I know they do a lot of bead counting in the US. What's the solution there? I mean, is it a compounded powder? Is it using beads? Like how does that one?
You can't actually compound the powder because you have the same problem. It needs to be enteric. It needs that special coating.
Okay.
But a compounding pharmacy can repackage the beads so that so that the capsules, weigh the proper amount and contain the right dosage of active ingredient. And if people want to, go the budget route, they can count beads if they really want. The clinician will assist them with that. But personally, I think bead counting is really hard for some people because those beads can be really, really tiny and they're hard to manipulate. So I would say that
just weighing them is right. Like I guess the pharmacy, they get a lot of these capsules, they open them up and they just start weighing them out and packaging that way.
I think it's a semi-automated process because they're just weighing the material. It's what they do with all the other types of capsules that they make. So yeah, right. Well, Cymbalta and Prestige also.
I was going to say that was my next question. How do you do Prestige?
Prestige doesn't have to be. It doesn't need that protective coating, but can get the raw material, the powder, and but the capsules would have to be taken twice a day because after you take after you take the active ingredient out of the coated tablet, the half-life is pretty short, so it has to be taken twice a day.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's
Mhm.
great. That must be really exciting. I guess for people in Canada at the moment to have someone have find these pharmacies and that would be able to do these types of things. Yeah, because speed counting takes a long time and there's a lot of headaches about just like those questions. What do I do with Prestige? But having someone that's looked at the pharmacokinetics and knows how to divide it throughout the day
Yeah,
for it to work is great. Hmm.
right. Right, and even even buying those little scales and calibrating the little scales for weighing your pills at home. It's to tell you the truth, it's something that I never would do because I would get my drugs compounded into a liquid if I could. So now in Canada, speaking of which, not all antidepressants are available in liquid forms. So that's an issue having to do with whether the drug companies want to apply to sell their a liquid form in Canada, and that's another regulatory problem. But so we have arranged also if it's best for people to taper with a liquid, we can have the liquids compounded.
From raw powder, dissolved into a solution. Say for instance, the pharmaceutical company doesn't make the liquid. You would take the powder and mix it in a way that it would. Okay,
That would be the best way to do it. Yeah.
yeah.
The pharmacies have different ways of doing it. Sometimes they grind up the actual tablets.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so the I guess the next thing is how much does a service like this cost? I don't know if you've truly settled on your pricing, but if you have, I think that would be interesting for people in Canada to know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Outro presently has it's a startup, so it's a rather low cost, $99 a month for
Okay.
Canadians in
Yeah.
Ontario and British Columbia. And the eventually it's going to be going up to 199 per month. But currently it's 99, and I think
Mhm.
that's a tremendous bargain for specialists, as you say.
That's a
Uh,
bargain. Yeah.
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 Now, you get your personal meeting with the clinician, and in the United States, this would be some hundreds of dollars for just for your intake, and then afterwards, subsequent meetings would cost at least $100 or 150 or so out of pocket, or even higher, because there are very few specialists such as yourself in this.
Hmm.
So just seeing a GP out of pocket would cost that much in the United States. Now in Canada, the the healthcare is covered by, and it's more of a centralized insurance arrangement. So people are um, people have reservations about paying out of pocket, but
Mm.
if you've had a series of disasters with tapering, then you know the value of having a specialist care for it.
Sure. Okay. And within that month, is there if I think about my tapering work, I mean, there are people who are uncomplicated and, they're just saying, I'm doing fine, the pace is well, and maybe they have a little bit of withdrawal symptoms at the start of the drop and then gets better. But maybe it's the nature of my practice, but I see a lot of pretty sick people and and we have a lot of visits where maybe we're not doing a lot of interventions, but it's a lot of, reassurance and, counseling and sometimes I may prescribe other supportive medications if I really need to. Um, Is that a challenge that you've talked about? Just because there's so many differences, I'm thinking, 199 a month, is that, like a couple of visits? Because some people, gosh, when they're in a wave, I've seen it. Sometimes I'm seeing them twice a week, I would say,
Right.
for, yeah.
We understand that people do have varying needs. I think that you're taking on more complex cases,
I think so.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, what Outro provides is tapering support for people who are really ready to taper, meaning that they're stable on their current drug regimen. Now, if they recently come off and they're feeling withdrawal, which some of our members are in that state, we guide them through a reinstatement. We get them stabilized before
Perfect.
tapering. So
Yeah.
so far, we have a good number of patients, and those who are tapering are doing very, very well. So we haven't really had to deal with the complex cases. But we were prepared to do that, and we're sort of very pleased that it's working out so well. Our belief, and you probably have arrived at this conclusion, is that if people taper properly from the very start, they don't run into these extremely gruesome, harrowing of symptom patterns that really are very difficult. And I think that you're right to think about perhaps adding temporarily other drugs to calm them down. So I definitely have seen that, and I understand what that means. We're not taking on that kind of case.
I mean, at least so Outro in its current form would be perfect for someone who is stable, and then they just go, you know what? Whatever stresses that led to me being on this in the first time have resolved. I'm ready to try and come off, and they're looking for a service that's going to get them off with a good chance of them not having, either acute withdrawal symptoms, which are debilitating, but also it's going to prevent them from developing protracted withdrawal if it's done in a safe way.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were prepared for the worst, but our people are doing so well. We really don't feel that that's going to be a major problem. But we're prepared to provide support for them when they're off the drug as well. So we have if they wish, they can arrange for psychotherapy through Outro. Outro has a psychotherapy component, which is an additional module for them to subscribe to. But I think that that's pretty amazing. We've got very, very well qualified therapists who also understand withdrawal problems, and also the issues that people have when they want to transition from perhaps a drug treatment model to a new life that is not where they won't need treatment. So that's I think that's really a very valuable offering. Outro has both components for people who want that. Now, some people come and they have their own therapists, and some people arrive and they don't really want psychotherapy. They feel that they're they can adapt, and they have plenty of coping mechanisms. People are really, I would say that it's a very we have a very mixed clientele so far, and they have different needs, and we've developed services for a full range of people who have been on antidepressants and are interested in going off of them in a safe way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that sounds excellent, and even you can have severe. I just want to say this: you can have severe symptoms and still not be a complicated case. I have people who have fairly severe symptoms, but the tapering plan is still the same. They'll just have pretty bad symptoms while they're tapering. But if you're offering like the counseling as well, to kind of help the people just kind of cope with it, providing the reassurance, maybe through the non-prescribing service providers that, we're moving at the right pace. I also think you could probably help some complicated patients as well. And so I think that you could get really creative in how you could have just with the staff that you have, help of a really, most of them, which I think is great. Yeah. So I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah,
You,
I'm thrilled.
yeah,
I'm thrilled by it. I think that
yeah,
it's just really wonderful because it's really designed for patients. And and Mark Horowitz and I are both providing consulting, and we really want it to be appropriately designed. So the founders, Tyler and Brandon, are really wonderful, and they've really, I think, created a wonderful service.
what can you tell us about the founders? I guess how they got into it. I mean, I don't know how much you can share. I mean, did they have their own problems with this? I mean, I imagine so. I feel like everyone in this space, either it happened to them or they know someone it happened to.
Yeah, well, Tyler had his own problems coming off of an antidepressant, and so he recognized the difficulty, and he and Brandon were working at that time at a clinic providing psychiatric services online. So the two of them realized that this would be a really there's a tremendous need out there, and there's nobody providing these services. So it seemed like a really great opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And what's it been like scaling up? Has it been challenging to find prescribers in Canada who could, I guess, handle the volume? Because I mean, I imagine I mean, like you said, you have a wait list. I imagine there's people waiting to be seen at the moment. But can you talk a little bit about, I guess, what it's like finding people who have an open mind to even do this? I mean, I don't think it's overly complicated. I think you can teach someone to do it, but finding the people that would join.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's actually been tremendous interest among nurse practitioners
Hmm.
who are licensed to prescribe. So we have two wonderful nurse practitioners, brilliant people with all really extensive experience. And our principal nurse practitioner has her own personal experience in difficulty going off of antidepressants, and she's just terrific, and has a real personal touch. So now the doctors that we've approached are generally, their practices are busy and they really don't have time for this. So I have to say that we've tried knocking on doors, and I would say that if the doctor is already employed, they're really not going to do this. And it's a little, it's sort of off the beaten path for most of them. But the NPs are just they've been closer to patient needs, and they understand it, and I think that they've just been wonderful. We have quite a few NPs who would be like to be working in this field. As a matter of fact, I think that there's a greater recognition among NPs for the need to taper and the problems with withdrawal than there is among doctors.
Wow. Um, that's hopefully going to change soon. Again, with the growing recognition of this going out, by people like John Reed, Mark Horowitz. They're publishing in a lot of, the journals are very reputable. I think Mark is on the Lancet podcast or something like that recently. So I think there's a lot more credibility, I think, in this area, and it'll be easier to convince people to join. So hopefully that eases up. Um, what about people in, say, the UK, the EMA, the US? I mean, obviously, there's big markets everywhere, and you're a young company trying to probably wanting to really nail it in Canada first. But what about, you know, I don't know if you can share about any kind of
What
plans.
about expansion? Well,
Yeah,
yeah, well, I think Outro would like to be the Amazon of tapering, but there are a lot of regulatory hurdles. So we have to have providers that are licensed in every locality. So
it's a mess.
there's
The US is
yeah,
an absolute mess, you
yeah,
know? Yeah,
it's difficult, and then there's also the insurance issues that it's very fragmented. So Outro is doing well in Canada for the time being, and as I mentioned earlier, would welcome investment to expand further, but um, it's growing organically now, and so it's doing okay. Um, uh, I think that the U.S. would be a very good place for such a service. There's, there, well, it's so much, the population is so much larger, and there's so many people who have had problems going off of their antidepressants, and so I think we're getting a lot of inquiries from the U.S. And of course, the people want to know when are you coming to the U.S. When are you coming to the U.S. So it's going to take some amount of money to make that happen.
sure. I mean, you might try just pick up a doctor in Florida, New York, Texas, and California. You'd probably have, I don't know, 4 or 5 times the population of Canada, just with people there. This is math off the top of my head, but I think California has
Absolutely.
like 40 million people or something like that. Maybe Texas is around like 30. I mean, it's just the dense, the population in the US is just it's huge. So
It's
um,
much larger. Yeah.
okay, that's really exciting. Um, okay, so for the people out there who are in Canada, what are they how long do they have to wait to kind of to get in to see you guys if they went onto your website and I guess filled out a form? Is
Yes.
there any kind of anything you could share about that?
Well, the company started in November, and as these things go, initially growth was very gradual, but recently we've had a real burst of interest. So I would say that I think that we're trying to get back to people in about a week.
Hmm.
It's really not that, it's not that long. Yeah, we asked them to fill out a form. They do need to be in British Columbia or Ontario right now. Um, and the clinicians are contacting them individually and working them through the rest of the process.
Another question. Would you work with people on benzodiazepines? Because I know once you add controlled substances, at least in the US, the regulatory hurdles increase. And so, yeah, tell me about. I don't know if you've had any conversations about control, benzodiazepines, or maybe even things like mood stabilizers or antipsychotics.
Well, I think that yeah, Outro would like to be tapering all of
Hmm.
the entire range of psychiatric drugs. We're starting with antidepressants because they're the most highly prescribed.
Hmm.
But if eventually yeah, it would be all of them.
Okay. Well, great. I think that's all the questions I have. Please, you know, uh, as a US based practitioner, I mean, if you have any questions in the future, I'm at your disposal for any kind of
Yeah.
conversations you want to have about that.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that we have had we have a bit of a network in the United States,
Mhm.
so and which is very heartening. I think that there's some interest, as you know. Unfortunately, it's not entirely mainstream yet, but there are some doctors that are interested in tapering, and it would be very nice for us to actually get together and talk sometime. Um, But yeah, well, I thank you for that interest.
Yeah, it's. I mean, people have been waiting for this for decades. So it's
I
very,
know, I
very
know.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me ask a question of you because how is it that you went through a fairly conventional training in psychiatry, correct?
Hmm.
And so how is it that you saw this need? What was your own, how was your, what was your
Sure.
realization?
Well, yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. I guess, my some I kind of joke about this. My mom is Chinese and my dad is German, so I had a few career options. It was like engineer, lawyer, or doctor. I was good at school. I ended up becoming a physician, but honestly, my heart was in psychology and self-help, and that was kind of what I was always reading and doing growing up. And so coming from med school, psychiatry, I was like, oh, that's somewhat in line with psychology, self-help, all that kind of stuff. So I went there, and then I was honestly just kind of like, and I don't know why not like other people weren't like this, but I was horrified by what I was seeing. I was seeing people who really, they would come in and then no one would kind of really care too much about what was going on in their life or why they were depressed or having any of these problems. And I just found that, I mean, from the beginning, it just seemed really off. And I even thought about quitting at some point. I was just like, I don't really see myself as part of this tribe. But then I found David Healy, who was, I have to say, out of everyone, he's been the biggest influence on me. His work on side effects and things like that. Also, there's Robert Whitaker and Joanna Moncrieff, who I also read a lot of their stuff. But when I started digging into David Healy's stuff, and he's really into the side effects research, that's kind of the majority of what he does. I started realizing that side effects were being missed everywhere, that we were, making people sicker with, we were throwing them into manic episodes and putting them on antipsychotics and kind of, everything that Rob Whitaker talks about. I mean, we were worsening their mental illness and then getting them stuck. And so eventually I couldn't be a part of this profession unless I did deprescribing because I was just, that just seemed to be such a problem. So where did it come from for me? I guess I don't know. Yeah, it just kind of like in my core, something felt really wrong about it. But that was not the case with the majority of other people that I trained with. I think there's like this social thing that happens as well. I mean, when you're in an institution and everyone's saying, mental illness, it's, it's biologically based, it's genetic, and we really need to, reduce stigma and help people get on these medications. I think people are kind of social creatures. They have a tendency to kind of want to, not stick out too much. It's obvious. It's not just in medicine. And I found that I don't know why I had the questions and other people didn't, but yeah, that's that was my perception of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when you were in residency, you were expected though to prescribe as everybody else was prescribing. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
I probably went through a year and a half of kind of doing so. And then I ran into a lot of trouble because then, you know, I started to have kind of more exposure and seeing things, and then I would be disagreeing with my superiors, and I don't think it takes much imagination to imagine what happened to me. I was not a very popular resident. I ended up having problems. I was assigned professionalism counselors because I was having disagreements with people. So long story short, I eventually just kind of stopped talking about these things and kind of just, survived my way through it. I took on like a lot of research projects to kind of not do so much clinical work, so I could do. I was publishing on, the online communities. I wrote some textbook chapters on suicide, on drug side effects and suicide, and I kind of just did my time, and then and yeah, that was that was it.
Yeah. It's yeah, it must have been quite a strain at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thankful for my wife. I mean, she was the one that was eventually just like, you got to stop arguing with people, just get out of here, you know? And so she was just like, just keep your head down. We'll get through this. And I haven't talked about her much, but she's the other part of the private practice that I operate in, and she does a lot of deep prescribing as well. And for whatever reason, you know, when I was sharing with her, like, because she didn't come into it, she came into it from a neurology background. She was helping people with strokes in medical school. But then when I was talking about, you know, Rob Whitaker and David Healy and what I was seeing, I mean, she just took to it, and now that's kind of the only thing that she wants to do as well. But
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
that's
yeah, I'm very like in your face. I need people to tell me to kind of pull back sometimes. It's just like, just pull it, you know, just pull it back a little bit. And so, you know, she kind of helped me survive in corporate medicine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's yeah. I can just imagine how difficult it was.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you have a good point. On my website, people are showing up because they want to go off of their drugs, and they might have been on them for many years, but they so many of them have been putting up with adverse effects, and they don't even know it. And it's
Mhm.
just it's shocking to me how well, first of all, I think that it shows an extraordinary amount of uh, fortitude for them to keep on those drugs, even though they're having those adverse effects. But but they're shocked when they find out that that whatever it was that they've been experiencing is caused by the drug. Like they take the drug, and then whatever their dose is, and then, like, they'd say, I don't know why, but an hour later I always have these palpitations. And um and and they are very, very relieved when they find that as they reduce the dose, the side effects also go away. But there are a lot of people also that are, had sleep problems triggered by whatever drug they were taking, and then they get prescribed a second drug, and so they have a couple of things going on. That's kind of a mess. Um, and I'm just always shocked that doctors just don't see this. It's just so obvious. And these errors, or these mistakes, are just they're so clear, and they happen over and over and over again. So I've got to think that it's the paradigm. It's the treatment paradigm. It's the, the way they're being trained, the clinical practice. The typical clinical practice is just has these errors built into it. So it's kind of a big problem. And I'm really grateful to hear that
Mm.
that as a as a psychiatrist in training, that you actually came out of it. Um, you survived it, and now you have your own practice. That's
Yeah, it was my wife, but it was, you know, in a way also, it was also the ISEP people. I don't know if you know them, but I went to the ISEP conferences, and so I was able to at least have colleagues. David Healy was kind enough to, you know, start replying to my emails, you know, when I was messaging him about his blogs, and we eventually built a friendship. So, you know, it was just like little people, you know, like he was in Wales, I was in Texas, you know, just there were little people around who kind of just fostered the interest, and it was just like, you know, you're not alone, you're not crazy, like this is real. And then and the more I did it, I was just like, oh my God, this is right. And everyone is kind of blind to it. And so um yeah, hopefully we're at a tipping point. And you know what you mentioned about, you know, why don't people see these things? It's you know, we have a very impoverished way of teaching psychiatrists about mental illness. I mean, the DSM, you know, they pulled out anything about contextual stresses and, you know, reactions to thing, and you know, it's pretty much just like a checklist. And when you have a checklist, and you know, if you just have 5 of these 9 symptoms for depression, you could have it. Um, there's there's no specificity in there. And so if you have someone on benzos, which is really common, who actually develops worsening anxiety over time, um, you know, no one is really trained to tease out the difference in the nature of the anxiety that the person originally had, and now what's occurring 2 months later. And I do a lot of this. So when people take these benzos, they start getting it's obsessive, strange anxiety. It's not like the stuff that they used to have. There's a nature to it, and so the kind of the nuance to kind of tease those things out are completely missed. And then obviously these doctors, and we talked about this yesterday, they're just bombarded with these messages about mental illness. It's underdiagnosed. You really need to treat it. These people are stigmatized, and so they end up going, oh my God, this person's mental illness is like evolving in some strange way, and then they start slapping on another drug, for that anxiety. Now they're on some like mirtazapine plus their Xanax, and then they're having a problem, and now they're feeling foggy, and then they go, well, maybe we'll put on some Strattera because that'll help with their ADHD, and then they become manic, and then next thing you know, they're on, lithium, and they're having thyroid problems, and it's like you've you've drastically changed someone's life at that point. That doesn't recover a lot of the time. So yeah, it's and the reason why people don't recognize this, it's this imbalance. There's the DSM, which has a very kind of impoverished, criteria for what mental illness is, and there's absolutely no effort in the communicating of drug side effects, and especially psychiatric drug side effects, which are subtle, and change people's emotions. I mean, all you open up a drug label and it says, "Oh, side effects," anxiety or depression. It's like there's nothing in there, and then there's, as I've mentioned before, there's no, we think drugs and pharmaceutical companies are highly regulated, but no one is saying like what articles a pharmaceutical company needs to sponsor or publish. So, they can publish about 1 million positive things about the drug, but after they put that risk in the label, they don't have to do anything in terms of, getting the word out there, risk mitigation or anything like that. So yeah, there's multiple forces that just these things are completely missed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. David Healy said that the drug companies are laundering the risk and assigning it to doctors. After that risk is in the printed in the insert, it's up to the doctors to mitigate the risk. And so it's all it's any bad outcome is up to the doctor. The doctor is actually legally responsible for it, but it's really not the pharmaceutical company, which is the whole point. Yeah,
there's also like this inertia. Like, isn't it easier if you're a doctor to say, "Oh, it must be the underlying condition," than actually I'm making you worse by causing this drug? Especially when there's like a treatment algorithm that says, "Oh, now you're treatment resistant, and I'll give you Seroquel or olanzapine." And but there's no kind of guideline document out there with Schatzberg and Shelton saying, "Hey, here's how you safely now undo this. These are the steps." So again, there's this like imbalance where there's so much, stuff out there where you could find reputable sources saying, "Here's how you increase drugs," but there's absolutely nothing. And like, and so I also think there's a liability risk there. It seems like there's more liability in bringing someone down off a medication when they're having a problem because, there's no guidelines to it. What are you going to say? Like, "Oh, I really knew this was a drug problem. Why?" Like what was it about it, that made you think that? And so, I mean, they've really kind of stacked the deck, and to push things in one way.
Yeah. I jokingly said that we need a new field of iatrogenic medicine to back people out of all of this stuff. It's really quite a large problem, I think. It's certainly, the people who come to my website, it's extremely common. If they're taking more than one drug, they're, very likely to have some kind of an adverse effect of one or the other. It's just, I think that anybody taking more than one should be closely reviewed for drug appropriateness and adverse effects. But even one of them might cause a problem. So yeah, it does not seem that doctors recognize even obvious adverse effects. Even brain zaps from withdrawal went unrecognized for quite a few years, and it's like there's nothing else that causes brain zaps. So you've got to figure, like, how did they manage to ignore patients telling them that they had these strange feelings in their head.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we were talking before. I wish some sociologists would write this up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would be good if they're out there. I'd be glad to talk to
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Um, oh shoot, I actually have a hard stop. I have a meeting going on right now, which I need to leave to. So I
Okay.
just want to say thank you so much again for telling me and everyone else about Outro. I mean, I just think it's just great and really excited to see where the company goes.
Thank you so much, Joseph.
Okay. All right. Take care. Bye.